Hey everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com. Today, I'm taking your questions on becoming a dealer tech, DSG maintenance, failing parts, and more. This is episode 123 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. So if you want to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com, and be sure to put question for Charles in the subject. That's how I filter out the emails to get the questions and pull them and put them on a show like this one. All right, before we get into your questions, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, suspension components, gaskets, bushings, even AC components. They also make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi DSGs. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. All right, let's get into your questions. First one comes from Grayson. How much experience should a person have before they apply for a VW or any dealer tech position? I currently work at a small lube and tire shop and feel that I've learned and grown all I can in this medium and want to move up. Awesome question, man. Here's the thing. It really depends on the dealership. It probably depends on the brand as well, but it mostly depends on the dealership. Some dealerships want you to have, 2 years of dealership experience. Well, how the hell do you get dealership experience if you can't get a job at a dealership? So, the hard part about this is I don't know. Again, it's very dealership specific. The way I've always interviewed and talked to people about getting a job at a dealership is, what are you bringing to the table? You have experience doing tires and oil changes. That's awesome. That means I don't have to teach you how to do tires and oil changes. But there's, a ton of other things that I got to teach you how to do, which is not a bad thing. And in fact, some cases it can be a great thing because I don't have to unteach you a bunch of bad habits in order to teach you how to do things the way I want things done, or the way, for me, Volkswagen wants things done. So it really all depends. It really all depends on you personally. Someone that doesn't have a ton of experience needs to have an incredibly good attitude, an incredibly good work ethic to overcome the lack of experience. You're gonna have to go in with the mindset that you are the most absolute rookie technician possible, and you know how to do exactly 0 repairs, and understand that this dealership is going to have to teach you, so you're probably gonna start out at a lower dollar rate. But that's okay because you're getting your foot in the door. You may start out in like a quick lube or service express program, which is fine. Again, you're getting your foot in the door. So don't get hung up on how much experience you don't have. Go ahead and apply. And when you go in for the interview, tell them what you know and make sure that you tell them what you don't know. There's, again, a ton of things that you don't know, but you're going to have a great attitude. You're going to have a really great work ethic. So that is going to overcome, again, the things that you don't know. So don't be hesitant to apply and try for an interview just because you feel like you may not have enough experience. All right, next one comes from Damon. I'm planning on buying a Mark 7 GTI performance pack with the DSG in a spring. As a car guy and mechanical engineer, I would like to meet your criteria for a VW candidate reliability video. Question is, I'm buying from a dealership, but across the river we have a VW German specialty shop. Should I have my maintenance work done in-house by the dealer for warranty issues until the warranty runs out and then change, start at the specialty shop, or just stay at the dealership for the life of the car? I'd love to drive the car for a decade, and I know it will need, as all non-vanilla cars would. So Damon, awesome question. So here it is. Take it to the dealership all the time, take it to the specialty shop all the time, start at the dealership, then go to the specialty shop. This is really up to you, man. As far as warranty goes, it's all about records. So not only just having the work done, so we need a record of, let's just use oil change, for example. We have the record of the oil change at 10,000 miles, which is the service interval on your GTI. Not only does it have to have all the information about the car, the mileage, the VIN, the condition, it needs to specifically say what was used during this repair. So you need to make sure that their repair orders say 50700 oil or whatever oil, I think it's 50200 oil. It needs to say that. It needs to say, 5 quarts of 5W30 oil. It has to be specific to what your car does require. If this were a diesel, again, 50700, the gas engines, 50200. Whatever your maintenance book says your car needs to have, that information really needs to be on the receipt of the place that you take your car. This is information that the dealership is, of course, going to put on the car and on the repair order. So you have that good side of the dealership. Just make sure that the aftermarket shop or the specialty shop is going to be putting that information on the repair order. So, it depends. Is the dealership good? Great. There's nothing wrong with getting your car serviced at the dealership. In fact, sometimes it's actually cheaper. I know you guys are going to be shocked. It is cheaper to do certain maintenance at the dealership. My dealership, for example, to do an oil change with the proper engine oil and a factory filter is about $6 cheaper than just about anywhere else in the area. Cheaper than Jiffy Lube, cheaper than, Quick Express up the road. It's actually cheaper. So, don't just use price in this, of course. If you like the dealership, great. If you like the aftermarket shop, great, take it to them. The important thing is documentation of the maintenance that you get done on your car. There is one other side of it that I don't really talk about a lot, but it definitely plays into a repair when you're just outside of warranty. So let's say you have 38,000 miles on your car. Base warranty is 3 years, 36,000 miles, and you have something go wrong with it. Let's say you have a perfect maintenance history at the dealership. A lot of dealerships are going to be a lot more likely to go to bat for you with Volkswagen if they see a service history with their dealership. Now, if you have a ton of service records from another place, they might still try and help you out. Think about it this way. It's about doing right for your customer versus doing right for a Volkswagen customer. Now, I get it. It says VW right on top of the building. VW dealerships need to do what they need to do to keep a customer as a Volkswagen customer, and that's incredibly important. But dealerships also need to make sure that they're keeping their in the building customers happy. So, right or wrong, it happens. I have mixed feelings on it. Maybe I'll do a show just about that. I have mixed feelings about it, but that's one other side of taking your car to a dealership versus an independent shop that may play into account at some point in the car's life. It may not. You really don't know. Again, to say it again, because I need to say it a million times, the most important thing is very accurate, proper documentation about the maintenance that's done on your car, just in case you do have a warranty claim and you have to prove that you've had the work done on your car. It's definitely a benefit to have a good local independent shop nearby, because there are some things that the dealership just can't actually do. All right, next one comes from Stuart. I drive a 2013 Jetta Hybrid, and VW Canada recently sent me an addendum to the service manual stating the DSG fluid needs to be changed every 60,000 kilometers. I thought the 7-speed version in this case didn't need a fluid change, as it is a dry clutch as opposed to the wet clutch in the 6-speed variant. I asked my dealer's hybrid tech and he wasn't aware of this addendum, but recommended doing it anyway. I don't want to pay the expensive service if it's not necessary, and I would like to see VW help with this unexpected addition to the car's cost of maintenance. Stuart, awesome question. I've actually got this question a bunch of other times from other people because, yes, Volkswagen in the US as well did add an addendum to the service manual or the maintenance manual to do a service on the DSG on the hybrid. Before, the DSG service was 40,000 miles on the wet clutch. So in the GTI, the Passat, the CC, all the cars that had these, what I call regular DSG, required a service at 40,000 miles, and that was a filter change and a drain and fill of the transmission. Well, the hybrid one didn't have that. It's, again, like Stuart said, it's a dry clutch system, so it didn't have a service interval. Well, it turns out Volkswagen did add the service interval to that. The problem is this: in order to drain and fill that transmission, you have to de-energize the high voltage system. That labor time is almost 2 hours just to de-energize and re-energize the high voltage system. So it's not a quick thing. Even the regular DSG service isn't cheap, but the hybrid one isn't cheap at all. I think it came in to be almost double. And there's no filter. It's just almost 2 liters of this fluid that's like $38 a liter or something like that. So yes, they have added it in. Do I think they should help you pay for it? You're damn right I do, because it wasn't part of the cost of ownership of the vehicle when you purchased the vehicle. Maybe even just paying for the first one would be a great way to, sort of bridge the gap and get you to the next one. But what I think Volkswagen in US and Canada should do doesn't really mean crap to anybody. But yeah, they did add it. It is expensive. I want to say we calculated it out to about $600, which is crazy expensive. Are there ways to drain and fill this transmission without de-energizing the high voltage system? I like to believe so. I think with like the machine that we use to fill regular DSG transmissions, we could rig up a fitting and pump it up through the bottom, but this one is actually filled from the top. And you're working right near the orange high voltage cables, so de-energizing the high voltage system is required by Volkswagen. That transmission actually had a service circular or recall on it to drain and fill the fluid early on in its lifetime, and that was one thing that we did have to do, was de-energize the high voltage system. So unfortunately for you, Stuart, you are correct that Volkswagen did add that. Yeah, I'm not really sure when. This was a few months ago that they added it in the US anyway, and probably about the same time in Canada. Not surprised that someone hadn't heard about it yet. We get so many communications from a technician standpoint that it gets really overwhelming and hard to keep up with all of them. But yeah, I saw it come through, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it back when it did, but yeah, I want to say our dealership's in the $600 to $700 price range, guess off the top of my head. So, the best advice I always have in these kind of situations where you're unhappy with the brand, give them a call and let them know, talk to them about it, and see if you can get any assistance. They may say, sorry, we're not going to help you. They may say, we'll pay for half of it. They may say, hey, you know what, we'll take care of all of it. It's case by case. I really can't say what they will do for you, but in my opinion, I think that a little bit of help on that situation would go a long way. All right, next one comes from Nick. Within the past week, my temperature light on my dash keeps popping up for about 20 seconds and then goes off and comes back on shortly after. Keep in mind that my temperature never goes above 190, my coolant is very dirty, and I'm going to thoroughly flush it when I get time. I'm also going to be replacing the thermostat and ECT. If the problem persists, any ideas on what I should do next? Yeah, Nick, I do have an idea what you should do next. After you flush it, or while you're flushing it, take a look at the contacts inside the coolant bottle. I did a video on the coolant bottle failure before. I'll put a link in the video notes, or link it up right up here so you can check that out. But it's probably the bottle that has the failure. What happens is gunk and crap and junk gets built up on the two little prongs that stick into the coolant, and it disrupts the resistance reading of the coolant, so it thinks your coolant's low. So while you're flushing it, you can take the bottle out, you can try and clean those contacts, you can put a new coolant bottle in. I'll tell you, nothing really brightens up the engine bay of a Volkswagen like a brand new coolant bottle. So, depending on how bad it is, I might maybe throw a new coolant bottle on. They're not terribly expensive. But if you're doing all that other stuff, budget may come into play. You can also take those two prongs that stick down in the bottle like this and push them together, not touching, but closer together. That'll help if they're corroded or junked up, but you're gonna wanna clean those if you don't replace the bottle. So good luck, Nick, man. Hope that works out. If that does work, post it in the comments section either on YouTube or on the blog at humblemechanic.com and let everybody know that that was what took care of it. All right, next one comes from Guillermo, who always sends me really great stuff. What do I think about the engineered for the dumpster state of modern car pieces? And what he's talking about is parts that are built with price in mind, maybe more than quality. So a great example is the intake manifold on the CCs. It's a big piece. And the only thing that generally, not always, but generally fails is the little sensor bolted onto the side. Why do we have to replace this entire part when just that little part will do? And why are we replacing all these parts instead of rebuilding all these parts? Well, it really comes down to two things, quality and cost. To take an intake manifold off the car, rebuild it, and put it back on is going to be cheaper in parts, but it's going to be more in labor. It's also going to run the risk of possible damage to the intake manifold if the technician breaks it. So, let's say the technician breaks it, now the dealership's buying the part. It's overall a lot of times cheaper for the dealership, the brand, the customer, to put a part on. Another good example is a transmission. By the time you add up all the parts that need to potentially be replaced in a transmission, you're not that much more expensive to getting a brand new box. Another part of it comes into warranty. If I put a brand new part on a car today at 100,000 miles and at 110,000 miles, 4 states away, that part fails, they take it to a dealership replaces the part, customer pays nothing. If I repair, rebuild that intake manifold, customer 10,000 miles later, 3 states away, goes to the dealership, they say, well, they didn't replace, but with this one part, we can warranty that, but we can't warranty the labor. So that's another factor that plays into it. But I think now, today, these parts are just so cheap to replace, to build a new one, a whole unit. A lot of times it just makes more sense to do that. But the great thing is, there are aftermarket solutions for a lot of this stuff. The TDI intake manifold is a great example. The arm hyperextends on the manifold and causes manifold faults, and at the dealership we put manifolds on it. But places like Diesel Geek make this little tiny aluminum piece that's awesome. You bolt it right on and it solves the problem for, I don't know, $100, whatever it is today. So you take a $600 job and knock it down to $100. No brainer, right? But how does a dealership warranty that kind of thing? They don't. Some customers are really cool about it. Enthusiast customers, when it's explained the right way, are very cool about it. The average person that doesn't know anything about cars only knows you charged me $150, it didn't fix it, now you're telling me it's $800. So that plays into it too. But a lot of it is plastics are cheap as hell to make and produce. And unfortunately, I don't see that necessarily going away anytime soon. But again, the cool part, like I'm so excited about this, the cool stuff is in the aftermarket with things like Diesel Geek making repair kits. Fix My VW, who's awesome. They sent me a cool box of stuff that I'm gonna do some Mark IV video with my buddy Tony on. They make repair kits for these things, and it takes away the need to replace the entire thing. It sort of puts it into a free market type setup where companies are making these repair kits instead of replacement parts. And you know, a lot of times it's better than what the factory part was. So I'm excited about that side of it. I'm excited about the future of it. I think 3D printing is going to really change some of this kind of stuff, Guillermo, that you're asking me about. Unfortunately, you know, big grand scale, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But this is where places and small businesses can really win in the automotive game and make a part that is affordable and easy to install and fixes a problem. That way people don't have to spend $800 on an intake manifold. You know, Diesel Geek, again, they make a repair kit for Beetle door handles. It's like $1,300 to replace a Beetle door panel when the handle breaks. This kit's like 70 bucks or whatever it is, and it fixes it, and it does an incredible job of taking care of something that, you know, for under 100 bucks, that would normally cost you $1,300. So I don't think that's changing anytime soon. This is the question of the day. What do you guys think about the quality overall of parts and the dumpster engineering, as Guillermo put it, of modern car parts? All right, next one comes from Leslie. I run an automotive repair shop. I'm the primary mechanic, and I have a full-time employee who is also a mechanic that works with me. I had a BMW X6 in the shop the other day, and my employee was asked to install an aftermarket fog light HID kit. He installed it and secured onto a wire. The HID ballast eventually heated up so hot that it melted the wire it was secured to. Since the vehicle was under warranty, I brought it back to the dealership for an inspection. The harness that failed was related to the airbags, so we didn't check to see that it was the fog light unit that was caused to the failure. The repair bill from the dealer was $700. Customer is a friend of mine, and I didn't charge him for the install. However, I did pay my mechanic to install the unit. I told my employee I would cover half the expense, and he would cover the other half as deductions from his pay at a percentage. What are your thoughts? Was I fair in a 50-50 share of responsibility? All right, so were you fair? Maybe. If this happened to me in let's say I owned my own shop and it happened to me, I was the primary tech and I had a tech that worked with me. I went to him, I asked him to install an aftermarket kit on a friend of mine's car. And he didn't do it right. So what would I do? Well, I don't know that I would have taken it back to the dealership right away. I would have tried to pull faults and do an inspection on the workmanship that was done. You guys probably could have caught it, maybe could have fixed the wires and avoided the $700 bill altogether. Not seeing the car, not seeing the situation, you know, firsthand with my own eyes, I don't know if that would have been a reasonable thing. But let's say that it had to go to the dealership and had to get this $700 repair. 50-50, I don't know. You know, you're a small shop and $700 right out of your bottom line is a lot of money. Did the guy do a bad job installing it? I don't know. You know, how bad of a job are we talking about? Are we talking about there's a loom that ran and he zip tied the ballast to the loom? Then maybe $700 was fair. I know I really wouldn't have been thrilled about having to pay these $350 out of my paycheck without having the opportunity to look at it myself and make the determination on whether or not I could fix it. When it comes to safety systems like airbags, of course I'm not going to take any chances and you know, hack back something together and risk an airbag not working right. Of course not. But I think that tech really should have got the opportunity to go back in and inspect his workmanship and see what happened and whether or not he could take care of it. You know, this is a tough situation, but I would also wonder, you know, how much of this aftermarket type stuff do you guys install? Is this, we only do, you know, factory stuff until this came in? Okay, well, mistakes get made. Or is it we put non-factory stuff on all the time and he just wasn't paying attention and zip tied it to somewhere where he shouldn't have? That's kind of how I would look at it. You know, 50-50 is not terribly unfair, but I would also ask, what was the agreement beforehand, you know, like as a condition of employment? Is it, hey, when you screw something up, we're splitting it, I'm eating half, you're eating half? Or was that never talked about? Because if it was never talked about and you spring it on them all of a sudden, well, I don't know how fair that really is. There's a lot of details I think that we would really need to know in order to make the determination on whether it was, you know, fair. I think that's the third air quotes I've done today. Fair or not. It's better than making them pay the whole bill, I think. But again, 350 bucks is a lot of dust on a screw up, cash right out of your pocket, you know, just like for you 700 is. So I don't know if it was fair or not. I will tell you this is probably a great learning experience for both of you. And now if you don't have a policy about mess ups or mistakes at the shop, it's time to implement one so you can go back to the book and say, hey, look, man, you know, we both agreed that paying 50-50 right here, we both autographed it, was the fair route to go. So that's the thing we're going to take. But if it's just out of the blue, you sprung it on them, hey, you're going to pay half of it. Unfortunately, as a shop owner, this is probably one of those times where you eat the 700 bucks, put the policy in place and say, hey, look, I just ate 700 bucks. We need to be more careful. This is the policy going forward, because maybe that policy isn't something that's consistent with your mechanic's thoughts. Maybe he's like, no, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to go work somewhere else. At the dealership, what we do is the shop pays the parts, the technician pays the labor in the form of not getting paid for the labor. So that latest engine job that I posted some pictures on Facebook, shop paid the ungodly amount for an engine and turbocharger, and the technician didn't get paid for a couple of days while he did the work. But that's what we explain to our technicians going in. They know that. When you make a mistake, shop pays parts, you take care of the labor. That's just what it is. You know, a sublet situation doesn't generally happen. So when that does, we kind of work with it. But unfortunately, these kind of mistakes, man, are just a cost of doing business. So great question. I hope it worked out. And it's an unfortunate situation that all shops probably have to deal with. All right, got time for one more. This one comes from Charles, not me. I recently got VCDS, that is the VAGCOM diagnostic software. And today I was attempting to look at my fuel trim on my 2005 A4. I'm having an issue with the short-term fuel trim is way out, but once the system is in closed loop, it does better. I noticed that long-term fuel trim numbers never change from 0.0, even after a clear fault code command. Is this normal? I have a screenshot but can't seem to attach it. Charles sent me that on YouTube, which is probably why you couldn't attach it. They don't let you send attachments on messages. But back to the VAGCOM question. So we are looking at fuel trim on a V6 A4. We are looking at measuring value block 32. This is going to get a little techie, and if you don't really know VAGCOM very well, you guys might want to skip a few minutes ahead and watch the ending. Charles, this one's specifically for you or anybody looking at fuel trim with VAGCOM. So in measuring value block 32, you're going to have 4 fields. You're going to have bank 1, bank 2, and it's not really long-term and short-term. A lot of people get confused by that. It is at idle and under load. So if this were a 4-cylinder, measuring value block 32.1 would be at idle, 31.2 would be off idle or under load. So that's going to be your bank 1, bank 2 is going to be 3 and 4, at idle and under load. So your idle fuel trim is what's getting out of whack. There's a lot of information that we don't have. If you want to email me that screenshot, charles@humblemechanic.com, and put screenshot question in the subject, I can take a look at it a little bit closer. But what this is looking at is the computer compensating for something. Sometimes it's a vacuum leak, sometimes it's a failing injector, sometimes it's a boost leak. It really all depends. And these numbers are in percentages. So a positive number, the ECM is adding fuel to the engine. A negative number, it's pulling it away. If we have a vacuum leak at idle, it's pulling more air in, the ECM is going to add more fuel. And that levels out the idle and compensates for the leak. And it can do that a little bit, as the engine wears, as time goes on, it can compensate for small things. If you went and snipped a vacuum line, it's compensating for it, but it's going to trip the check engine light so that you know there's a problem. What we need to do is see what's going on all 4 of those fields. 1 and 3 are idles, so 1 and 3 are also different banks. Do we have a problem only on one bank, or do we have a problem on both banks? If we have a problem on one bank, on a V6 Passat, basically A4, we need to look at what are the things that are only impacting that one bank. So it can't be an airflow meter. It can't really be a vacuum leak, because that's going to really affect the whole engine. That's going to affect both banks. We're going to be looking at an oxygen sensor, because that only does affect one bank. Now, if this happens to have 2 airflow meters and the banks are split, that's a different situation. Torags are like that. It has 2 airflow meters, but they actually go into one intake manifold and essentially one bank as it goes into the engine. That's really great because we can just monitor what the 2 airflow meters are reading and compare the readings. But we're looking at fuel trim here. And you may not be seeing a change in the 0.0 on the off-idle numbers, which you call long-term, because there may not need to be a correction for it. look at what your percentage is. I'll be honest, I don't have a gut feeling about what percentage on your car is really too much. If it's 4.0, I might let that roll. If it's 7.5, now we probably got a problem. So overall, we need to evaluate those 4 fields and look at what's going on both banks at idle, which is where you're having your problem. Go drive your car and see what it does and see what happens, the change in the off idle numbers. Another thing you can do is put it into basic settings and go to measuring value block 32. And that sort of kickstarts it a little bit faster sometimes, but you really are going to need to drive this car and evaluate what's going on the other 2 numbers as well. So Charles, awesome question, man. I wish I could be a little bit more help to you. The diagnosis of fuel trim issues can be fun. It can be kind of a head scratcher. It gets really interesting when we start evaluating what's going on a vehicle while it's under boost, because all of our numbers sort of flip around between idle and off idle. But if you want to send me that screenshot, we'll go through it a little bit better than I could just talking about it. And also, measuring value block 32 is not really the only one you want to use. There are other value blocks. Also, you don't really want to monitor these fuel trims while you're not in closed loop. When it's not in closed loop, the car's doing what it's doing to heat the car up to get it into closed loop. Drivability concerns and check engine lights generally come into play when it comes to fuel trim when your car is in closed loop. So we want to make sure that we're not trying to monitor our fuel trim on cold start when the car's just going to do what it's got to do to get warmed up as fast as it can. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, please post it in the comments section below. We had a great group of questions today. Hey, if you like the video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I always appreciate that. You can also subscribe on YouTube or on the blog at humblemechanic.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the blog, and obviously right here on YouTube. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Drink of the day. It's early Sunday, so we're drinking coffee out of a Holy Grail Ale cup.